can you? I think this takes us up to the doorstep. Can you
it does.
walk us into what happened in Spain?
Yeah, it might be worth. Shall I very briefly explain what a Spanish gin tonic style is, just in case anyone,
yes,
just in case anyone doesn't know. So imagine a really big wine glass, like a big burgundy glass or something like that. Something that like is bigger than the size. I mean, I've got quite a big fist, but like, but bigger than the size of your fist. A big glass. Anyway, and in that would be absolutely full of ice right up to the top. And then you would have a decent measure of gin, because it's quite a big glass, and then you would top that up with tonic, and then it would be garnished with very colourful or kind of ornate, whatever it might be, botanicals or citrus peel or something. But the big thing, I think, is the sheer size of the glass and the amount of ice. I mean, if you're talking inch cubed ice cubes, I think you're talking about 8, 9, 10 to fill a glass, probably something like that. It's a decent size. And that's it really. The tonic water would be cold, and there's a lot of theatre that can go into it as well. And that's more something that you would get in Spanish bars. But as a concept of the thing that's different, it's generally that it's a larger drink, because it's at least a double measure, but maybe more, depending on where you are, and that huge prevalence of ice, which, depending on where you are, of course, makes it harder or easier to make. I mean, it's certainly something that's easier to make in a bar than it is at home, because it would take your whole ice tray from your freezer to make one drink.
Right. It's interesting too. I mean, I don't want to belabor us too much on the subject of ice, but I've seen pictures online. Obviously with inflation and rising costs here in the U.S., I've seen people like snap photos of their drinks receipts, and like they're actually being charged for ice. I'm sure it's nice ice
Really?
that they're being charged for, but going back to that notion of the UK being slow to adopt ice. This really does put us in the restaurant space. Like it makes it seem like this type of drink could not have originated outside of a very potentially high-end space where they actually have time to.
Oh, for sure. And that's where it came from.
Right. So talk to us. I'm not sure. I don't know the extent to which this has been like traced back to a single source or like a single person, but as I understand it, it originated sort of like in the San Sebastian high-end Michelin star culinary space. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I've had it. Apologies for my geography, but the Basque region was where I was where I had heard. I've heard varying different things. Some people have said sort of 2010. Some people have said it was earlier than that, but I think it's this century. So it's in the 2000s. And the story that I had heard, sadly not totally, nailed down, was that it came from, people wanting to have a refreshing drink in the kitchen. It was a chef thing. And so they take these big burgundy glasses, because it wasn't a specific glass at the time. They would fill it with ice because it was a hot kitchen, so they needed to have all the ice, and they'd make a gin and tonic with it. And then, of course, if you come from a culinary background, if you wanted to garnish it, you would. Now, I think probably early garnishes might have been something like a bit of rosemary or something, but that's kind of unheard of. For anyone else. I mean, we had lemon and lime and cucumber, and cucumber goes back to the 70s because Seagram's were using it in an advert back in the 70s. But like other than that, we didn't have a lot of choice. Partly because there are only so many things that a bar will stock or a pub will stock to garnish a drink. They're not going to keep watermelon just to garnish one gin and tonic. It's ridiculous. So there's an aspect to that, and then it gradually spread throughout Spain and then came over to the UK. And actually, it's not uncommon to have lots of different drinks served like that. You order a rum and coke, you'll probably get it served in that kind of style. And then it also became a way of kind of different bars to show off about the how fancy it is and the theatrics of it as well.
I love that notion of like the kitchen versus the bar, right? You go behind most bars, and if they have a garnish station, it is a sort of narrow tray. There's your lemon bin, your lime bin, and then maybe, you know, your cherries or something like that, or your oranges, whatever, what have you. But it's not very big. It contains at most 4 or 5 potential garnishes, and that's it. That's what you're working with. That's your entire toolkit. But then you just go through a swinging door, and suddenly you have the keys to the castle. You have an entire walk-in freezer or refrigerator filled with, in the case of a Michelin star restaurant, you know, these amazing, you know, venues in San Sebastian that people travel, you know, continents to go and simply have a single meal at. They've got the riches of the kingdom in these walk-ins, most certainly. And, you know, it's